The Peoples Democratic Party PDP has one last hurdle to scale before the party can fully embark on a campaign to get the electorate on its side, and that is to select a running mate that complements its presidential standard-bearer Atiku Abubarkar. As part of consultations to enable him choose his running mate, the PDP presidential candidate on Wednesday met with all the party's elected governors in Abuja. Atiku had on Monday met with the members of the party's Board of Trustees in Abuja on the same issue. The consultation was to ensure that the person to be chosen as his running mate will be acceptable to all stakeholders of the party. Joining us on this show this morning as we discuss the search for a running mate to complement Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is OBIORA Okonkwo, a member of the Peoples Democratic Party, and Jacob Mark, former legal advisor of the Peoples Democratic Party. Welcome to the morning show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I'll start with both of you. Now, we understand that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has been holding consultations. He even met with former ministers on the platform of the PDP. And Governor Tambuwa has told us that the whole idea is to ensure that whoever emerges as his running mate will be acceptable to all stakeholders. Well, is it acceptability to stakeholders within the party that is the biggest consideration? How about compatibility? Is the party planning to impose a running mate on the candidate, whether the two are compatible or not? Because the issue of compatibility has been one of those factors, apart from all the other ones about political value, education, capacity, and all of that. We've had governors and their deputies not being able to work together. We have had presidents in this country not being able to work with their deputies for the simple reason that they will say, well, that's the person the party imposed on them. Well, first, I'll start with you, Mr. Okonkwo, and then Mr. Jacob Mark, I'll take your own input. Mr. Okonkwo, you may start.
Thank you very much, Doc. In issue of marriage, you probably be talking about compatibility. But as it stands now, PDP want to win. So they will be looking more of somebody with a political value. And with the case of Atiku Abubakar, in his last outing, it is probably obvious that he made the choice alone, choosing P2B from the Southeast. The Southeast governors then, you recall, were quite unhappy that there were no proper consultations made. And it had a little bit of a negative effect in the outcome of the overall election result. So for a party that is in opposition that want to win, this marriage should just be about political value and what the person is bringing on board. So any presidential candidate like Atiku Abubakar should be able to accommodate. And it's very important that the whole party structure is part of this. And what PDP need most now is to ensure that they are galvanized as one unit moving towards this election. So I should really think that they are taking the right steps in the right direction to avoid the mistakes of the past.
Mr. Mark, Mr. Jacob Mark, your viewpoint?
Yes. My position is very similar to the erstwhile speaker's position. Truly, I love the fact that the flag bearer himself is not a novice or a newcomer on this terrain. And he has already started what ought to be done. Consult widely with major stakeholders, consult widely with the party structure cut across the country, and then be very firm on what he expects the running mate to bring on the table, just like you have said. And it's going to be a purely political decision based on how the PDP can take advantage of current situations surrounding the ruling party to win election. We have a challenge, and that challenge has to do with how to manage that choice. And it is going to be very easy to handle if the people involved are sincere and very constructive about it. And he has started to discuss with the Governors Forum, it is important that the governors are carried along. And just like the previous speaker said, in 2019, the choice of Peter Obi was not applauded by most of the governors. And so that segment, that very big platform needs to be taken care of. The candidate also needs to consult with maybe former National Working Committee members, former ministers, former or current board members, BOT members of the party, so that when he makes his choice, he doesn't have a difficulty going around to convince people about the choice. And once the right choice is made, the ruling party has made the campaign a little bit very easy for the PDP, having failed virtually in every segment of society. And so this choice certainly has to be about what the running mate can bring to the table. And I'm happy that His Excellency Atiku Abubarkar has a long chain of options, very well qualified, very, very experienced persons, either among the governors or among other party members that can fit into this ball.
Well, Mr. Mark just mentioned how the ruling party has made things easy for the PDP, but not so fast, so you don't slip into complacency. There are other factors at play, such as the Peter Obi factor, Peter Obi phenomenon, especially in the southeast, which could erode whatever gains PDP might have hoped to get in their traditional stronghold. And obviously, you recall that there's a lot of disgruntlement about the fact that PDP's presidential ticket went to the north, when a lot of people felt that it was the turn of the South, specifically the Southeast, given how loyal the Southeast has always been to the PDP. They don't really like the way that they have been replayed. And here comes a Peter Obi, presidential flag bearer of the Labour Party, as has been acknowledged by INEC. How do you plan to counteract that very real threat to PDP's safe seats in the Southeast?
Thank you very much. There is no doubt that there are some sort of dissatisfaction among PDP members from Southeast and most people around the nation, deservedly demanding for presidential ticket of PDP from Southeast, I think was germane. But the truth of the fact today is that PDP ticket is in the north. And His Excellency Atiku Abubarkar had promised that he would just do one tenure and support every process to transfer this power to the Southeast. He could do that if he won the election, but it's understandable that an opposition party that is not in a place to hand over no power, because they don't have it, they were not better positioned to decide where the power should go. They have to be strategic in their thought. And it's turned out that they felt that they were going to the convention and the strongest, the most viable candidate would win. His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi did not see the process to the end. Who knew? He would have emerged the flag bearer if he showed up at the convention venue. But since he didn't, Atiku has the ticket. So every PDP member in the Southeast would be able to think strategically and look at it from the point of view that with the ticket in the North, what happens after 4 years? How do we hold His Excellency Atiku Abubarkar to his word? Therefore, if he's choosing any running mate today, if it's not coming from Southeast, it's coming from obviously somewhere in the South, we should ensure that he has to go into an agreement that will be made public with that candidate that is not giving the person unusual advantage, or the person will not even vie for the office of the president at the end of his 4-year tenure. As of the phenomenon of Peter Obi, it is true there are a lot of frenzy around, but we'll watch and see what happens after 3 months. and then first phase of the first 3 months, and then wait for another phase of the first 6 months. It's a long journey to February, the election day, and we see how it works out. And I think also, as of today, it seems that it's only Peter who is dancing in the village square. So it's the only masquerade everybody is looking at. When the other political parties like APC, PDP will finish their process and select their presidential vice, and then go into the field, we'll see how they will push back, how they will counter or answers they will have to his own narratives. I think it might not just be that all the way. And besides, whether we like it or not, presidential election is a big deal. It needs a formidable structure that is grounded, that is on the ground. I've run an election in Anambra State. Doc can confirm to that. We won the primaries. We were cheated out. We were the most popular candidate in the scene. But not going with a party that has structure obviously impacted on the overall outcome of the election. So I think that personal recognition, give it to Peter, he has it. He's a national figure. But when it comes to election proper, it takes a lot more than just the frenzy that we are seeing today. But who knows? If for the first time that magic will happen, it's a good hope to a lot of people like Doc. I'm sure if he knows that he can just come out and all the people, all the people who love him around the nation will vote for him without that big money, without that big structure. That would be a beginning of the best thing to happen to Nigeria. If it will happen in our own lifetime, we will applaud that, we'll be glad, we'll celebrate it, and we'll support him when he wins. But as it is today, me, realistically, without emotion or sentiment, I think my eye should be on APC and PDP.
Real quickly, what will be your reaction to the fact that Tinubu is obviously making inroads into the north and the southwest, the south, parts of the south? A lot of people say that balked Tinubu, that balked Buhari 12 million bankment votes. Some of it might probably go to Tinubu as against an Atiku Abubakar. And obviously, Tinubu too will make very strong inroads in the southwest, which gives about 5-6 million votes. I mean, what do you say about all of these permutations?
Well, Asuwaju, His Excellency, has actually demonstrated extraordinary capacity to have emerged as the flag bearer of APC. I give him the kudos. It was an unprecedented victory. But talking about the 12 million votes, I want to believe that 12 million votes, if at all it exists, wherever it is exclusively for His Excellency Muhammad Buhari. I don't know how transferable it is. It should be seen as 12 million naira in your account. And then before it goes to somebody else, it has to meet other conditions. So I don't think they're going to automatically go to Asuwaju. Recall, this 12 million vote was not for APC. It has been there for Buhari in all his political journey. So going to Asuwaju should not be automatic. And then, Southwest, give it to Asuwaju. He will be very strong. All his opponents and other contestants should be able to really get prepared for a top fight in the southwest. But Atiku, being the presidential flag bearer of a major party like PDP coming from the north, there will come to a time the northerners will choose whether they want number 1 in PDP or number 2 in APC, because obviously the best combination Asuwaju will have should be to choose a northern Christian. And from the names that are out there, those northern Christians are in the French states of the north. So I think my prediction is that when the chips are down, Atiku will have to go back to the north, do some consultations, has some conventions to do, And he's not a pushover there. He's been around. He's been around for a long time. Since 1991, he's been contesting for the presidency. He's built a whole lot of political structure and network. He has people who will trust him. Even if he was not their first choice before the candidates emerged, I should say a whole lot of people shifting posts. And when that post is shifted, they will go to the advantage of Atiku. So, and don't forget also, in the past, 2019, Atiku had a good run in the North. I expect him to do even better, especially if he'll be able to galvanize every member of PDP. And what has happened in APC, you have seen that also certain segments of APC who are also from Connaught, obviously may have had a different choice outside His Excellency Asuwaju. That was why you had some permutations about possible Senate President Lawal coming up. And so it depends on how Asuwaju will assuade those people and bring them to his side. Otherwise, if they decide to shift their position, it will be to the advantage of Atiku. And recall, a typical Nigerian politics is just people moving from one place to the other. So we will not be surprised to hear tomorrow that some people have moved, or maybe they were in one party, but actually working for the success of somebody in another party with some underground deals that they would have cut out if the victories are assured. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But obviously, I do not believe that 12 million votes is automatic to Asuwaju.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Okonkwo. Well, one thing is this. The PDP has set up a committee. That committee met on Wednesday. That committee met on Thursday. We're told that consultations are still ongoing. These are, the other presidential aspirants, members of the Board of Trustees, members of the National Working Committee, and also former ministers of the party, to try and come up with an electable vice president, running mate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. And of course, we have just 1 week because the deadline for national elections is for the submission of names of nominated persons and the relevant other documents is June 17th. So that's just 7 days. Now, what are you hearing, or what is really going on? Because what is reported is that some of the front runners include Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta State, Governor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi of Enugu State, and Governor Obaseki of Edo State. Now, this is a short list that I have seen in the papers. What's your take on the relative strengths and weaknesses of this, short list? Particularly, as some people have been saying, well, Wike, looks like the one who will get it. But, yes, he did, comparatively well in the presidential primaries. But he also has his own special baggage. If you could help us just deconstruct, take a look at this short list. And if you have a preference, you tell us.
Well, actually, I've had the same thing you've just put up here. I am glad that Ugwuanyi is coming up from the southeast, but without emotions or sentiments. For the purpose of this analysis we're having on this all-important station, PDP is not strongest in the southeast. It is obvious that when they come to South-South, where they have formally 6 governors that is taking over the entire South-South state, until they cross river and they come to APC. But formidably, PDP structure is on ground. And somebody like Wike is quite on top of it there. So if I were to choose from the point of not only electable, like you said, valuable presidential vice, I should be looking at South-South. In that South-South, they have 6 PDP states. So if you are able, at the end of all the consultations, and make a choice that will be acceptable to each and every one of them, and they come together as a force to go to this election, then you are obviously going to be coming from a very strong point of a base, which is South. And South has been primarily, traditionally, PDP zone. As of Wike, like him or you hate him, he put up a strong battle at the primaries. What I think people are mistaken about Wike is that he started off as the voice and the face of opposition. And at that point, he could be seen to be brash, forceful, and loud in his ways. That's typical opposition voice. But it was obviously difficult for him to transmute from opposition to a presidential aspirant. So when he made his declaration that he was going to run for the president, a whole lot of people were trying to see in him a new demeanor, a new tone, a new choice of words. But that transition was not very easy for him. And for that reason, some people may be thinking that, that probably he will not be obedient and loyal vice president. But if you go through his records, he has always been. You know, he was chief of staff to Rotimi Amechi, and I know in some quarters he has been actually linked with the reason why Amechi eventually won his gubernatorial case, and he was loyal throughout the period. At the point they parted ways was for other reasons. It wasn't about loyalty. It was for, you know, the battle between them and Jonathan. And he was a minister under Jonathan. And he has remained grateful for what Jonathan and his wife did, and for sign of loyalty, we haven't heard of any disagreement. And you can go on and on. If you go to Rivers State, he had brought back to reckoning a good number of the political players in that state, like the former Governor Audley, who was in the fringes, who they started all with. I see that. So I wouldn't have a problem. With the worst case scenario, during the consultations, there could be an interview. The interview should be just made and spelled out, do's and don'ts. That should be allowed. But the only thing I think that is going to be weaker, Atiku has to do more to show and prove to Southeast that at the end of his one-term period, Wike should not run for president, because he's still young, he had developed massive network. And if you look at his own vote pattern, his votes transcended beyond South-South. So he has developed pretty much good network. It's a good choice if it has to be made. Okonkwo also has a different demeanor. He's opposite of what you can say physically and otherwise, but that's expected. But I think that there are some little bit of tension inside Delta State between him, the governor, and the political godfather of Delta State. And I don't know, that originated from the choice of who takes over from Okonkwo. I don't know how they're going to resolve that differences, because if governorship has been taken from that source, and then the person now is coming to be vice president in the center, I think these other stakeholders might be a little bit uncomfortable with that. So if you will overcome that battle, I'm sure it's a good choice. But when you go to issue of Edo, it's less likely, you know, because Edo has not really shown strength, and besides, even the PDP structure in Edo is highly cannibalized, and someone like Wike is very strong right inside there. So if you have Wike, it's as good as having Edo as well. Then you go to Akwa Ibom. Beyond just declaring for presidency and then, you know, gathering 30-something votes, we haven't seen really much coming out of the governor of Akwa Ibom State.
That's Udome Manuel.
Udome Manuel, compared with somebody who pulled really 200 and something votes, you know, which came across all parts of all sorts of Nigeria. So, you know, people might think Wike had some burdens, baggage, but it's what the votes she had just simply shows that monkey may not be fine, but in mama like her.
Okonkwo. Okay. We'll take a short break now. Please stay with us for more with Professor Okonkwo. Still with us is Professor OBIORA OkONKWO, a member of the Peoples Democratic Party, and Jacob Mark, former National Legal Advisor of the PDP. Thank you, gentlemen, for staying with us. Before the break, I'd asked Professor OkONKWO, this is for you, Mr. Mark, I'd asked him about any concerns you might have and your plan to mitigate the inroads the Peter Obi phenomenon is clearly making in the Southeast, which has traditionally been loyal to the PDP. So he is going to split some of your votes there. How are you planning to counteract that? And given the bad feeling that might be lingering after the PDP failed to zone the presidential ticket to the Southeast?
First of all, it is important to know that the PDP has never zoned its presidential ticket to any specific region in terms of Southeast or South-South. It is usually North and South. So the discussion initially was on how the PDP will zone its ticket either to the north and to the south. And all the major stakeholders, including interest groups, contributed to the debate. And when a committee was set up at the national level to discuss this issue of zoning, a decision came that the ticket should be thrown open to all Nigerians so that the best candidate will be produced. So, and persons from all the geopolitical zones participated in that discussion. And as a Democrat, you are bound to accept the decision of the majority. And I believe I was a proponent of that zoning, maybe to the south, and not specifically to the southeast, but we said that zoning should take place. But when we came to a decision that the ticket should be thrown open, I think everybody was satisfied and everybody accepted the decision. So the coming out or the success of His Excellency Atiku Abubarkar was born out of that general consensus, that in view of the circumstances we find ourselves, where the decision as to zoning didn't take place earlier, together with the issue of zoning the chairmanship of the party and other offices, it was late in the day to start zoning to a specific zone. And so the ticket was thrown open. Now, as for the issue concerning His Excellency Peter Obi, he's a likable person, he's a likable aspirant, but he's not a particularly convincing candidate in the general election. You cannot win an election in Nigeria by claiming the support of only one geopolitical zone. It is not winnable. It is something that will be attractive. It is something that, yes, many people will identify with. But that number of people coming from just one geopolitical zone cannot win elections in Nigeria. You need every support, every form of support from the entire country to be able to make victory. And so that is a challenge. Yes, the votes of the PDP may be affected in one particular geopolitical zone. But just like all of us saw during the primary elections, both of the PDP and the APC, the Southeast delegates representing the zone you are talking about didn't vote even for their own. So on what basis is anybody going to believe that they are going to vote en bloc for a particular, for Peter Obi? It is difficult for some of us that have campaigned and sustained our support for power shift to the South to continue to cry more than the bereaved. I'm not from the Southeast, but I was a proponent of that power shift to the South, and particularly to the Southeast. But they are showing during the primaries just discouraged some of us that I cannot, in good conscience, continue to clamor for power to go to the Southeast when they themselves do not believe it and do not work for it. Nobody will put his trust or his confidence and his investment politically on the people who do not believe on what you are campaigning for. I will not do it. I will not commit political suicide by continuously believing in a cause when the people who are the immediate beneficiaries do not believe it. And as we talk, there are so many people from the Southeast that are part of Atiku Abubarkar's campaign structure. And they are working tirelessly to ensure he succeeds. So, in all honesty, I cannot be found from another part of the country to be campaigning more for the Southeasterners when they themselves are not campaigning for themselves. The votes, yes, may be affected, but they will not affect the general election the way it is structured today.
Embark, what do you mean that the Southeast were not campaigning for themselves? I want you to expatiate on that you talked about. I also would like to ask you of the chances, of your candidate, Atiku Abubarkar, in the North, which would be a big battleground, owing to the fact that Tinubu is making inroads, and you can see how he got 13 northern governors to his side during the convention. So, I mean, what do you mean by the Southeast were not going in for it? Didn't they campaign enough? Didn't Ohanes Ndigbo speak enough? Didn't they put people out there enough? And then, concerning the fight to finish in the North?
No, the facts are very simple and very plain. There were 90 delegates from the Southeast, and there were 2 aspirants for presidency from the Southeast. How many votes did former Senate President get? Assuming that he got all his votes from the Southeast. Out of those 90 votes, he got less than 20. So there is no difficulty in calculating how much the Southeasterners believe in this campaign, believe in this clamor for power to shift to their zone. In the same vein, when you go to the APC primaries, the number of delegates from the Southeast was over 200. We had Igbo aspirants. How many votes did they get from the Southeast? We can count them, compared to what they gave to Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, and compared to what they gave to Atiku Abubakar. So in all honesty, it appears we, from outside the zone, are the ones clamoring and fighting for them, while they, in principle, in practice, do not believe in the agitation. And it's very certain, because I know that even on this platform, Arise TV, I have spoken in the past in support of the shift of power in 2023 to the Southeast. I know I've done that before. But to come and find strong political players sitting on the campaign strategy of Atiku Abubakar from the Igbo extraction. I know quite a number of big names from the Igbo extraction that I can mention that were in the strategy team of the success of Atiku Abubakar before the primaries. How do I satisfy or justify my support for that when the persons who ought to ensure that their agitation succeeds are actually opposed to it? That is the challenge I have. And as you can see, the current situation is there. People are already clamoring for the position of vice president. And I don't need to tell you that a large chunk of the Southeasterners are now positioning themselves to be vice president for the PDP candidate. And I don't blame them, because probably that is what they wanted ab initio.
That the Southeast probably wanted vice president ab initio. I asked you another question about the North and chance of Atiku Abubakar in the North, the fact that Tinubu has made some inroads in the North. What do you say about that?
No, Tinubu can only make some inroads when it comes to the primaries of the APC. When it comes to the general election, Tinubu knows, and everybody should know, that he doesn't stand a chance in the North. He will make some little effort. In fact, if it was Osibanjo, it is very possible that some young people, some very active persons in the North would have supported him. But for Tinubu, what really does he have that can be compared to Atiku? The campaigns are already on. Go on social media. If you understand Hausa, there is what they are now saying, that from Baba to Kaka, that is from a father to a grandfather. That is what APC is giving us. And nobody will buy that in Nigeria today. We have suffered enough in the past 7 years in the hands of a Baba. We cannot, in all honesty, as Nigerians, hand over Nigeria to a grandfather who appears frail and has difficulty managing even his frame. This country is too complicated to be handed over to somebody who has difficulty managing his life, managing his health, managing his person. It's not easy. I mean, if you own a very active company that is targeted at making profit, you will be careful who you hand over the running of the company to if you want to make profit. Nigeria is a serious business concern, and it cannot be handled to persons who are having challenges.
Him, so even older than him. Atiku is older than him, so what do you mean by Kaka? Atiku is older than Tinubu, so what do you mean by Kaka?
Does he look older than him?
Older than him by age.
If we put him on the racetrack, well, that is what he has chosen to show you. Some of us are aware that he is 7 years older than his daughter, from the records put on the public domain. When did he marry? When did he give birth to the daughter, who is 61 and he is 69? How can we justify, how can we be playing with Nigeria like that? People must take this country serious, and people must be very serious about who will handle this very complicated country in the next few years. We can't joke about it and we can't toy with it. The country is on a precipice, and if we are serious, we must go beyond the mundane and look at the serious issues. How can we hand over our country to persons who can, on even simple issues of age, not be very forthright? When the very apparent says something different from what you are swearing and writing in your declaration of age, it's not correct. And it is not fair to the country that we joke over these things.
Well, okay, just before we move on, two things. I'm sure Mr. Okonkwo here would like to also respond to some of the issues that have been raised. And then to you, Mr. Mark, why all this, desperation, if I may use the word, about the choice of the running mate or a vice presidential candidate, as it were? I know it's a creation of the law, Section 141 of the 1999 Constitution. And the VP will be a member of the Federal Executive Council. He will be chairman of the Economic Council. And he will also, he's just a heartbeat away from that office. In the case of his principal resigning, becoming incapacitated, or dying in office, as we have seen in an earlier case. But for the better part, the Vice President of Nigeria doesn't really have powers under the 1999 Constitution. All the powers that can be exercised by him, they are all vested under Section 5 in the President of Nigeria, and he can only exercise delegated authority. And that's why former U.S. President Walter Mondale says that the position of the Vice President is an awkward ceremonial position. Former U.S. Vice President Thomas Marshall, Vice President to Woodrow Wilson, also said the main job of the Vice President is to wake up every morning and to check on whether the President has woken up or not and is in good health. So why do you think there's so much, hustle and bustle over who becomes the next Vice President, beyond just giving a sense of balance, not balancing South-South, balancing the North? But Mr. Okonkwo, first your reaction to some of the issues raised by Tundu and Rufai and Mr. Mark's response. And
yes.
Then we'll talk about how important the office of a vice president is.
Yes, thank you. I I agree with Mr. Mark on most of the things he has said, but I differ a little bit about the Southeast. Southeast actually did as much that needed to be done for the position of the president being zoned to the Southeast. And they knew they had the disadvantages of producing a presidential candidate in PDP if it's not zoned to the Southeast. You had mentioned that the entire delegate vote of these 5 states of the Southeast numbered less than 100. So if they had given that 100 votes, for instance, to one presidential aspirant, it would still have made no difference. So what just simply happened was that at the point that zoning was not visible, they had to think strategically. Strategically, not to just out of sentiment and emotion, dump their vote somewhere that it will not count. You recall that part of the things we are facing today was that in the last 2 elections, we blindly went PDP way. And that was what made Mr. President say that he had less than 5 votes from Southeast, so why would he break himself making some political investments there? So I can assure you that 80% of the people in Southeast will have to go for the winning candidate. And they still believe that PDP remains the best bet that potentially will give them presidential candidate in a big platform to go for the election. So if all the efforts did not yield the expected result this time, then at the venue of the delegate election, obviously they had to think not from their heart, but from their head. The same thing happened in APC. So as it is today, if APC wins, the ticket is already in the South, and they will spend like 8 years in the South. So it will move to North after the Asiwaju regime, assuming that it wins. So, but now PDP ticket is already in the North. So the next place will get again in the South. And let me tell you, yes, you are right, we are talking about South zoning to the South. But we believe in the South is that was not proper. It should be the next discussion should be zoning to the Southeast. Because going to the South is not South-South or Southwest. They've all produced presidents. So I want to correct that. So they believed they did what they had to do, but at some point then you need to review your strategy and then look at what is coming ahead. 4 years is now what is before us in PDP, and we had to take a strategic decision about that. So that may be why you saw most of the votes going to a different candidate they thought that might win. So winning is the game, and our interest in the next 4 years is the issue. Then as of the presidential candidate, yes, if any candidate today get it wrong in making that choice, it will surely affect his electoral outcome. That's one. And secondly, you had made references of the quotes from the US and all that, but you should give a better testimony that in Nigeria, a vice president had become a president. All right? So in the case of your former boss, President Goodluck Jonathan. So people, it comes with a different value here in Nigeria. And if you see His Excellency Professor OBIORA, he probably wouldn't have been in a position to even aspire for governorship of Lagos State, politically, if he had not been a vice president. So because he was a vice president, he now became closer to the position of president and then had a good outing and show during the process of the primaries before, obviously, things went the way it went. So as much as I agree with you, there's nothing much to it in terms of activities. It comes with a whole lot of values, for somebody who is in politics or somebody who has a future interest. Today we're talking about potential next president, which is His Excellency Atiku Abubarkar. If he wasn't vice president to Obasanjo for 8 years, probably he wouldn't be as formidable and as strong as it is today. So theoretically and constitutionally, yes, there's not much to do, depending on what the president wants to, yes, but it comes with a whole lot of other advantage. So it's in line with that. I'm already saying that if for any event, His Excellency Atiku is making a choice from South-South, he must put it clear, sign an undertaking, and convince us from Southeast that that person coming out from South is not going to run for president, because obviously it puts him again in a very strong advantage position. So I would rather say to Mark that our thing in Southeast was that our selection process for people in different political offices, from governorship to minister and so on, has been very faulty in the last few years. And for that reason, we've been able to get the best of our first team to come into the field, to become governors, to become senators. And then when the push came to shore, then we had weak candidates to contest. So I think that for us, we need to go back to the drawing board. That's why today, even talking about getting a vice president from Southeast doesn't look visible, because we don't have performing governors from Southeast, if we have to say it. If you have formidable governor like Wike in Southeast, this would have been a game over.
Well, Engineer Dave Umahi says he's achieving...
I'm talking about PDP.
Oh, okay.
Dave Umahi is doing wonderfully, but I'm talking with specific reference to PDP. And then if you come to Southeast, they have only two PDP states. Leadership there is weak. Then you have strong Dave Umahi in Ebonyi State performing. Then you have Anambra State with Abga, and then you go to APC Imo State with dynamic and strong in Anambra, yes, with Hope Uzodinma. So if you take a presidential vice from Southeast, then you have to contend with these three states that already are not PDP. So strategically, I personally would not think that it should be my best choice of reference. So for us, Mark, we appreciate and acknowledge our disadvantages in terms of numbers. We have 5 states instead of 6. We have fewer number of delegates because our local government, compared to Kano, Kano as one state has triple local government compared to some states from the Southeast.
So 4 local governments.
Yes. So those are the things that are the issues. And that's why we're saying the fairness and the equity that we're talking about should give special consideration to this issue to accommodate us. Because beyond those little numbers we have, Southeast has done so much in this country, and they're coming with a whole lot of value. What they're putting on the table is great. But that's politics, all right? I acknowledge, yes, that PDP threw open their ticket. But now it has happened. And now Atiku Abubarkar has made a promise. We should expect him to keep that promise. 4 years, it should be zoned to Southeast. And anybody coming as a vice should sign up that is not going to run if the person is not from Southeast. Otherwise, we'll have another strong force. You can imagine Wike doing what he did from the fringes of Rivers State as a governor. If he becomes the vice president and puts his force again, then it will be a non-starter for us. So it's very, very critical. But if that is guaranteed, 80% of Southeasterners having learned their lessons from what happened. Your former boss, our great leader, Jonathan, we baptized him and gave him a Bele Chuku, and then invested all our political capital in him, and we're paying the price now. So we've learned our lessons. We have to be more strategic in this moving forward. So as long as they're in PDP, they will look up to PDP as the possible hope, because having gone to North, it will come to South. And when it comes to South this time, it should be Southeast. It should not be South any other place. So that, I think that when these narratives are quite created and pushed in there, it will actually affect the chances of Peter, who I believe at some point people will realistically consider whether they have to approach this from point of emotion, sentiment, or strategy. Because the strategic approach to it is, where do you have to invest your political capital that has more potential to give victory? And then, because 4 years before you know it, it's just here. You know what I mean? So, that's what
Okay, Mr. Mark, over to you. How important is the office that everyone is jostling for it? One paper was even reporting today that money has also been flying around, and that some people are ready to make money available just to get that position. Well, that may be propaganda, but that's at least one story out there.
Right, it appears that we've lost Mr. Mark, but Professor Okonkwo, I'd like to go back to what you were saying about the fortunes of the Southeast electorally so far. There's also a view that posits that the Southeast was not prepared to do the hard work that is involved in becoming president of Nigeria. How would you address that position? That there was some sense of entitlement. It's our turn, so you can give it to us, rather than do the hard work, the across the nation consulting. How would you address that?
Well, I don't really think that it's about not doing the hard work. It's about the weakness and the strength of those who were in the race. They did as much work as they could, but I can tell you that we had not produced strong and formidable leaders. Recall, if you were to be in those days, we had political titans like Kwame and Chuboka, Debo, and the rest of them. When you talk about South, you're talking about Southeast, because they stood top and high above all their contestants from the Southeast. So I don't think that it's about not doing the right thing. They did the much they could do within their available strength. All right. So that's why I do not still see why Peter Obi did not follow that process to the end. He could have gone in there and probably would have won. All right, they vote for. So I think that they did as much they could. We do not have strong leaders. We have not produced strong leaders. And I know also that those who are in the political ecosystem in Southeast are not our best. The best of the people, obviously, do not consider it worthwhile their time, because our selection processes are faulty. All right? It does not produce the best. So these are one of the reasons that I believe when we go back to our drawing board, we have to look at. We have to look for people. In those days in our tradition, you go to homes of those who want to lead and say, come and lead, we'll be behind you. All right? Today, those people are scared, chased away with so many other things. And there are those who are reasonably engaged in very important things of their life, and they don't have much time to come and waste. I'm sure some people show a lot of sympathy to somebody like me who running between my